This is the concierge, sir.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Concierge Confidential. I'm your host, Brian Ortega, and I have to say, I'm excited for every episode, but I am extremely excited for this one because I was actually planning on doing this episode about Michelin stars and Las Vegas, and you know what happy news we got this exact day? The Michelin Guide will be returning to Las Vegas as it hasn't been here since 2009. So about 15 years since the Michelin Guidebook has come to Las Vegas. So this is actually going to be a really fun episode because I was actually going to explain some things about Michelin, a couple things, misconceptions that you should know about the Michelin Guide and what that means for Las Vegas. So I'll go ahead and I'm also going to explain a couple of the restaurants that I think are going to be really shooting for a Michelin star. And a couple of ones that I think, might get in regardless. So let's go ahead and dive into the episode. I'm super excited for our Michelin Guide episode coming up next. Okay, guys, so let's explain what the Michelin Guidebook is. So each region in the world has a Michelin Guide as long as Michelin decides to come to that area. And it's very prominent amongst very large cities. So like New York, Los Angeles, they actually have their own guidebooks because they are so large. Then you also have regions. So the one that's coming to Las Vegas is actually going to be part of the Southwest region, which would include Utah, Arizona, Nevada, and one other one that I can't think off the top of my head. New Mexico, that's the other one. So that is like the region, so it'll cover. So little background on the Michelin Guide. The Michelin Guidebook is actually sponsored or paid for by the Michelin Tire Company, the French company, obviously. And they put out a book of different restaurants that are essentially, this is like back in the good old days when you needed a map. It actually outlines like what restaurants are along certain routes. They would highlight where they are and then how they would base it on a system. So they have the 3-star system, which most people have become pretty familiar with Michelin Guide's star system. And essentially what it means is if it is a 1-star, that essentially means that it's a very, very good restaurant that is worth going into if you are in that part of the world. It's worth going in and eating there. Also, 2 Michelin stars, that is worth going out of the way if it's, certain miles away from where you're going to be at. It's worth going a certain distance to where you can drive to along the way. And then you have 3 Michelin stars, which that is the top ranking, which is it's worth to travel to this place in a plane to actually eat at the restaurant, where the actual restaurant is the highlight of that entire vacation. So these are obviously very, very important. They hold a very, this is kind of funny because there's actually a show on Apple TV, if you guys have Apple TV Plus, or it's just Apple TV now, where it actually kind of goes through like how the system works and how they try to attain it, and then like the different star systems and how important it can be to a restaurant. So I think that the show itself does a good job of explaining the importance of Michelin stars, but I think it also shows an overimportance of stars at times, because sometimes you are in a place that you don't really need to be in the Michelin Guidebook to get a lot of business. You can just have a great location and serve very decent food, and as long as your bookings are really high, it's not a huge deal. That doesn't sort of diminish how important stars are, because they can be very important for places that are not in high populated areas. So for example, the Las Vegas Strip is a very highly populated area. You're going to get people walking through, foot traffic. Regardless of where you are on the Strip, you are going to get foot traffic of people walking to and from. If you are not on the Strip, then these Michelin stars would actually be a huge boost to business, because what happens is that you would find, people looking for someplace to eat that night. They open up maybe, it's not really a guidebook anymore, but you go online, you look up, Las Vegas, and then it shows you all the different tiered, Michelin stars. You can also get into the Michelin Guidebook as like a restaurant of note, and not get a star. So it's sort of like you're on the rise, which is still very, very important to just be in the guidebook. The guidebooks are actually very helpful. I actually was in Pasadena, so if you guys have heard that episode, go check it out. But I was in Pasadena, and I was just sitting at a bar, on a Friday night. It might have been Thursday, but it was a Friday night, and I didn't know what I wanted to eat. I knew I wanted to eat somewhere in downtown Pasadena, which has many, many restaurants, lots of restaurants. You don't even know what's what. And a wonderful little pamphlet that I got from the hotel, which hotels still print out brochures. It's great. So I was looking at the brochure. It said that we have these restaurants, and then I actually went to the Michelin Guidebook, or actually clicked on the restaurant that looked interesting. It took me to the Michelin Guidebook, which was really fantastic online. And then through there, it actually shows you the restaurants that are in your particular area, if they're 1, 2, or 3 stars, and you get to choose. I think a common misconception about Michelin stars is that it has to be an expensive restaurant. That's actually that's the furthest from the point. Obviously, when we get to 2 and 3 Michelin star restaurants, they can be very expensive. You're looking at $400 or $500 a dinner or a person to dine at that restaurant, and sometimes it's prefixed because of the food costs. But of course, when you get to the single 1 Michelin star restaurants, you can usually find places that have entrees for about $40 to $50, which again is higher than a normal night out, but not unreasonable for getting a very high quality meal. They also highlight dishes that are in that restaurant that you have to try. It's usually whichever one of the inspectors tried when they went, and then that's the one that they sort of highlight in the book. So these can actually be very helpful, especially when you're in cities that don't have like a major center like the Las Vegas Strip. It's very unique that way. And the next question that people usually have about like sort of the Michelin star system is that, yes, you can take them away. So they have to keep up that level of service, that level of cuisine every single year. And Vegas has had them before. And I actually just want to finish up like kind of explaining Michelin. And I do think that, again, it is important, but I don't think it's like detrimental if you don't have a star, because you could still be a very good restaurant and not have one. But there are some people that really, really want a Michelin star, usually very young chefs, very ambitious chefs. And sometimes they have a vision of a restaurant and they need to have a high reservation rate for them to be able to sort of succeed in their vision of their food, because if you don't have people, you can't have very expensive food. It just sort of, that's the way that it goes, or things have to counterbalance. So why has Las Vegas not had a Michelin stars guidebook, a Michelin book, since 2009? So one of the reasons, the actual reason listed, is that the economic downturn made them not have a book in Las Vegas. So sort of the economics weren't right, and it wasn't beneficial to have a guidebook for Las Vegas because nobody was spending money and there was no reason to sort of propagate that, and they just never came back. So there were a lot of restaurants that had Michelin stars when we stopped having a Michelin guidebook. So the thing about marketing in Las Vegas is that if you were still around after 15 years and you had one before, you are still a 3 Michelin star restaurant in our eyes. So, because you couldn't get it taken away. A fun little tidbit is that Bobby Flay had a Michelin star. His only Michelin star was for the Mesa Grill at Caesar's Palace, and he got it taken away. So he got it given to him in 2008 and got it taken away in 2009. And since it didn't have one in 2010, he wasn't able to get one back. And Mesa Grill is no longer there. There's actually only, let's count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 restaurants that actually are still open and still have their Michelin star, or 2 or 3, that were around back in 2010, or 2009. So those restaurants, we'll actually list them. So one of those restaurants, which is actually kind of funny, is the DJT, which that stands for Donald J. Trump, and that is inside of the Trump Hotel, which I've never been inside of the Trump Hotel, and it says it has 1 Michelin star. Restaurant Guy Savoy, I did know this, has 2 Michelin stars for his restaurant at Caesar's Palace. Joe Robuchon was touted as the only 3 Michelin star restaurant in Las Vegas, and it is still open right next to the Ka Theater. And I've actually walked inside of Joe Robuchon. I've never eaten there, but I've walked inside of the dining room. I've walked inside of the kitchen, and it is honestly one of the most beautiful rooms you can be in. It actually doesn't feel like a restaurant. It actually feels like a very expensive living room where you have a very expensive meal. Usually they have two different menus. You can do one for $350 or one for $500. I think it's like $450, and that does not include wine pairings, which is a 16-course digestif menu, or as we like to call it, tasting menu. It is very, very good, highly precision, and it is fantastic. It looks beautiful, and people love the bread service there. That's one of their favorites. L'Atelier, which is his sister restaurant, which is right next door, countertop only, and that actually is a more affordable option. They do have a very delicious cheeseburger if you want to try it, and everything is sort of cooked in front of you, and that is actually a really fun part of doing that. So this is a good example of a restaurant that has a Michelin star, but is actually quite approachable in terms of pricing. It is still pricier than usual, like one Michelin star restaurants, but it is very, very good. Also Le Cirque, which it's still like 50-50 if Le Cirque is even open. I've walked by Le Cirque many, many times and have never seen it open, but it has one Michelin star and is still listed as a Michelin star restaurant. Michael Mina, which is at the Bellagio, one Michelin star restaurant, haven't eaten there. A lot of seafood, so I tend not to eat a lot of seafood restaurants. So haven't been to Michael Mina, but walked by it about 1,000 times. And then we have Wing Li, which is a one Michelin star restaurant at the Wynn, which I am quite familiar with that one. I've walked past it many, many times. It smells delicious and very approachable. They have lemon chicken there, which I am very excited about that. So one day I will eat at Wing Li because it looks delicious. So that is all of the Michelin star restaurants that are still around from back in the day. Also Nobu. Sorry, I missed out on Nobu. It's still in there. But yeah, it's here. So are Michelin stars important for Las Vegas? I did say this earlier that if you are not on the Strip, it is somewhat important to have a Michelin star because it gets people off of the Strip to come find you, and I think that it's important. So where do I want to go from here? So I did want to explain a couple of the restaurants that I think will be shooting for a Michelin star and might get one. So it's also can be quite political, but actually I say it's quite political, but after watching the documentary, which again, free ad on Apple TV, it's like you can't really buy a star. It's actually kind of hard to actually buy a star because you would think that they would, but it's tough. So I'm going to list off a couple of places that I think will either retain their Michelin stars or be shooting for one if they have one already. So we already mentioned Joe Robuchon, L'Atelier. Also, fun fact, Joe Robuchon has the most Michelin stars of all time. Also, Joe Robuchon is no longer around. He passed away, but just wanted to make the note of that little note. Also, fun fact, the Joe Robuchon bakery. So here's an insider tip for everybody, or just insider information, is at MGM Grand, all the desserts come from the same bakery. So the bread, all the desserts, all come from the same bakery downstairs, and they're delivered upstairs to their respective restaurants, except Joe Robuchon. Joe Robuchon actually has its own little room inside of the bakery, which is just for their pastry chefs, which is super badass. Also, it was fun because every time you go into the bakery area, they have macarons that you can take with you, and I always loved arranging bakery tours at that time. Anyways, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about right now. But Joe Robuchon, L'Atelier, Guy Savoy, and Michael Mina, I do think all of those places will try to get their Michelin star or keep theirs. Wing Li, I believe, will also keep theirs. That's at the Wynn. Nobu, of course. And then a couple other ones that I think are kind of on the cusp, but I think we'll try to. Mott 32 at the Palazzo, which is Chinese cuisine. It definitely has the caliber of having unique dishes. It has Peking duck, which for the longest time was very hard to find on the Strip. Now you can kind of find it everywhere, but I think Mott 32 might be shooting for it. Same thing with Stubborn Seed, which is over at the Resorts World. a lot of their restaurants I know are going to be shooting for a Michelin star. So I did say that if you're on the Strip, you don't really like care if you have one, but there are a couple of properties that it is very, very important that they try to get one of these stars. Places like Resorts World, Fontainebleau, those properties, Mandalay Bay, those properties which are like on the further ends that don't have a lot of foot traffic, they definitely will want those particular restaurants to shoot for Michelin stars. Stubborn Seed also is because they have a chef that actually has a Michelin star already from Los Angeles. I'm sure they would want one here in Las Vegas as well. One other one, which is kind of interesting, I put this in this area, but I don't know why. Lotus of Siam. I think when Lotus of Siam was in its like own like little spot back where like there's like, you know, a gay club, that was like way cooler because I think Michelin likes having these little spots, even though it may not sound cool. But now that they moved to a bigger location, it's much more commercialized. I think it's going to be actually kind of hard for Lotus of Siam to get one. It's very good food, but I don't know how much their attention to detail is still there after they've sort of diversified across the valley. And before I move on, you did see a lot before, you know, this whole list was explained or revealed that they were going to be doing it again. A lot of restaurants, when they opened, you would see them say, this is by Michelin star chef, blah, 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 blah. And it was because we didn't have a Michelin guidebook. So that was always like kind of the fun cop-out was that you could say, oh, like a Michelin star chef, and that's how it worked. So now they actually have to have a Michelin star to be able to say they're Michelin starred. So it's all about marketing. To be honest, it doesn't really matter. But let's explain the new kid on the block, and that is Gymkhana. One of these days I will say it correctly and we'll see what happens. But this is actually the new Indian restaurant, which is a Michelin star restaurant in London. It just opened, which everybody says is going to be really tough to get in. They are obviously going to be shooting for a Michelin star here in Las Vegas. I don't know. They probably will get it, especially if they're, they have to keep up their consistency. Also, kind of just on a side note, as I'm sort of talking through these things, I think it's a good thing that they're coming because I think a lot of these restaurants sort of rest on their laurels, and I think it's going to keep them sharp. And I think it's going to be good for the customer. Obviously, if they get a Michelin star, it's probably going to get more expensive, probably bump up every dish about $10. But I do think it's important because it's going to, make sure to, stay tight. But anyway, so let's look at some of the restaurants that I've been to that I think will be shooting for that Michelin star. So, Wakuda is on the top of my list, just because Wakuda, again, is one of those restaurants that boasts that they have a Michelin star chef. I have heard some things from a bartender who no longer works there that they say they get certain ingredients from certain places, and then they found out that they didn't. So don't know how that's going to go. But again, more inside information from bartenders around the city. But I think Wakuda definitely could do it. Every time I go in there, people say this is the best sushi I've ever had in my life. So I am, inclined to believe them. And I think that everything in there is top notch and like to a T. Their cocktail program is awesome, and I think they could do it. And I think if they were able to get one, I think that would be really important because I do think that the shine is kind of like shining off of Wakuda. So I hope that they're able to kind of get that back, get their mojo back, if I could say so myself. Right next to them, I think that it's very interesting where this place is at. But right next to them, downstairs, which talk about a flex. Let's talk about a flex from guys. Also, this sounds really loud, but we're gonna lower it just a smidge, so we're not blowing out your ears. So, anyways, really cool that they did this whole remodel in front of Wakuda, which is the main lobby for Palazzo. And they used to have this really cool centerpiece, which is beautiful. They took it out, and now it's stairs that lead down into Hades. But once you go down the stairs, it kind of shows you where the old Legacy Stadium is. But more importantly, the place that is open, to the left of that is the new Bazaar Meat, which is Jose Andres' restaurant. So it looks really cool. It also looks, pretty tough to get into, at least just walking in. Honestly, I feel really bad about this, but I've looked at socials for Bazaar Meat, And like, I don't want to try it. Like, it just looks really expensive and really small food. But again, I never have problem with eating small food, but I think it is very like a super rich spot. I'm not going to lie. It looks like a very super rich, experience. And it's like sort of a tasting menu sort of option. I don't know, but I don't know why I went on this tangent, but Bazar Meat definitely is going to be shooting for a Michelin star. Jose Andres has Michelin stars already in other restaurants, and I think based on what he is shooting for, this would legitimize what he's doing at Bazar Meat at the Palazzo. So I think it's going to be very, very important for them. Another one, Momofuku, which is David Chang's restaurant, which is located inside of the Cosmopolitan. I do think that they do want to shoot for one. Again, he's one of these chefs who's one of those like restaurateurs who I think Momofuku has a Michelin star in Los Angeles or New York, and I think they want to legitimize their standing here in Las Vegas by getting one here. Moving on from Momofuku, which when I say it closed, I meant the one that he had in like New York. The Momofuku in Las Vegas, very much still alive. So as I move down the list, here are a couple other ones that I think will be shooting for it. Ito, which is a sushi restaurant, sushi bar, really, on the very top of the Fontainebleau. It's a highly exclusive place. Not impossible to get a reservation. There are only 10 reservations available. That's not the problem. The problem is it's very, very pricey. You're looking in like the $300 to $400 range with a wonderful view of the Strip. One of the best views of the Strip, honestly. I've been up to the Poodle Room when they were having like the initial like come take a look at our spot, and I went up there and it's a great view, honestly. It's fantastic. Really weird urinals, though. It's sort of like if you've seen the movie Dune. It's sort of like one of those sandworms, and you have to like do your business in the sandworm. It's very weird, very odd situation, but it's there. But Ito, I think, definitely has a shot at doing it. I think a lot of restaurants at Fontainebleau are going to be shooting for it. Obviously, all the restaurants except Poppy Steak, because that place is so stupid. Speaking of which, Mother Wolf, which comes from Los Angeles, a lot of chefs who come from LA and New York really, I don't want to say understand, but they understand the importance of Michelin stars. So I think if you get a chef that comes from New York or LA, they're definitely going to be shooting to hit that standard because they know how important it is to the restaurant and what it can do for business. Because people look through the Michelin, there are some people, not me, but there are some people who will only try Michelin restaurants when they're on vacation. That's why these, guidebooks are very important, because regardless if I think they're important or you think they're important, but there are people in the world that do think they are important. So it is important, for the sixth time, to be in one of these guidebooks. So I do think Mother Wolf has the caliber to do it, the staff, and I do think that Mother Wolf will probably be in the guidebook at some point. Maybe not one Michelin star. It might just be like referenced, but I do think that it has all the trappings to be a Michelin star restaurant. So not that I know anything. Like, I'm not a chef. This is a very chefy thing. I go off of vibes. So as we continue on the Strip, Carver Steak, which is at Resorts World again, I think that they're going to probably try to get one. Pisces, which is over at the Wynn. Again, I think all the restaurants at the Wynn are going to be trying to get a Michelin star. And when I say get, I think some of them don't care because they're going to have business regardless. I think it's just like the higher ups of those places would like them because it's always nice to sort of tout. We have the most Michelin star restaurants in Las Vegas. I can see that happening already, like the Wynn or Fontainebleau. They're going to end up having a restaurant with the most Michelin stars, and then they will go ahead and tout it that we have the most Michelin star restaurants on property, and it's going to be a whole thing. So get ready for all that to come in the coming days. So another one, which I think we're going to start going off of the Strip. So these are the places that I think it's going to be very important for them to have one, and they're really going to be shooting for it because they do it on a daily basis. Whether there's a Michelin guidebook or not, they are shooting at a very high level. And one of them is Partage. Partage is a very similar restaurant to Joe Robuchon in terms of the execution of the cuisine. It is French style. It is prefixed. I believe it is a very large menu, 14 to 16 courses, and I do think that they do charge between $350 and $400 per person if you want to go ahead and dine there. And I do think that they would be shooting for it. And also they're in Chinatown, so that's always kind of like a fun thing is like, like going to Chinatown, which I think Chinatown will have a lot of Michelin stars in it, but not by Chinese restaurants. There's a lot of restaurants that end up taking up in Chinatown that actually are totally different than like the Chinese or Thai cuisine that you're going to find there. I think it's going to be funny when you find like sushi restaurants in Chinatown that have Michelin stars. I think that is going to be really fun, especially if you're sort of an explorer. I think that'll be really cool. So another one that I think not as I wouldn't call it a shoe-in, but I would definitely call it is a they may not like this, but it is a very try hard restaurant for those of the kids in the listening. If you know what that means, you're a try hard, and that is Sparrow and Wolf. Sparrow and Wolf is definitely a restaurant that tries to push the limit and amaze you, which is a good thing, especially if you're an adventurous eater. I think that's a really big deal. I'm not that adventurous of an eater, but I have eaten there. I thought it was fine, but again, I'm a bad example because I am not trying to, explore too much. But I did have a chef friend who absolutely loves it, and all my friends who are foodies, they love Sparrow and Wolf. Like, they can't get over how much they love Sparrow and Wolf. And it definitely feels like one of those places. It's like right off of like the street. It's a beautiful restaurant on the inside. And I just think it's one of those places that really wants a Michelin star. It would be like a really big deal for them. So good for them. Also, Boom Boom Bang Bang. That's a restaurant in Green Valley. They actually had a couple chefs that worked on the Las Vegas Strip, and they really touted that they wanted to, hit it to another level. And again, these are in local areas, which is going to really, help their business going forward. So another one, which I think is super high end, even though it is not in a hotel, which it's very rare to find one of those, and that is Harlow. Harlow, which is a steakhouse and fine dining establishment inside of downtown Summerlin. It is beautiful on the inside, has a wonderful wine selection, great steaks, seafood, obviously, and it just has just that fine tip to it, And I know a lot of hockey players end up eating there, which is, a big deal in Vegas. So I think Harlow would really benefit, and I think that they are of that caliber of being a Michelin-starred restaurant. So that'll be interesting. As I'm kind of thinking through, let's just kind of go through some the biggies. Why didn't I mention a couple of these restaurants? So there are certain restaurants that kind of don't care, and I will explain a few of them now. One of them being Carbone. Carbone, which is inside of the Aria Hotel, which you would think would be a shoe-in to want to be a Michelin-starred restaurant. And the owner of Carbone, the brand Carbone, used to have one in New York at his secondary restaurant. So not Carbone, but the one right next to it. And they got it taken away. And they have kind of a prickly relationship with Michelin, because whenever they take your star away, it is not a fun feeling, I'm sure. And they will always go on and say, oh, well, it doesn't matter. It's just this, system that's set up for us. Well, it matters to some people, and you don't have one. So that's why you're just a bitter guy, because they took yours away. And I think that Michelin likes to see you sort of, this is sort of like my interpretation of, the documentary about it, is that Michelin wants you to execute your cuisine at a very high level with great service, with fantastic ingredients, and be a memorable experience. That's for like a 1-star, kind of deal. You want it very good, high quality, consistent, all those good things. Then at the 2-star level, they want to see a little bit more of the chef's personality. They want to see you kind of push the boundaries a little bit. They want to see some things you may not be able to get other places. And then you get to the 3 Michelin star restaurant, where it is entirely the chef's personality on the plate. It's something innovative sometimes. Sometimes it has to be, something really high quality and really well done, or something that they've never tried before, and you have to go there just to have it, and it's the only place you've ever had that dish. And that's really hard to obtain. And like, nobody knows the answer. Like, if I had the answer, maybe I would open a Michelin star restaurant, but I don't. So it's really one of those things that is pushed onto these inspectors to figure out what is a 1, 2, or 3 Michelin star restaurant. So places like Carbone, which don't really push the envelope, they've even said that they do comfort food very well. Like, you're going to have the absolute best rigatoni you've ever had in your entire life. The best vodka rigatoni you've ever had in your life, that's what they're going to serve to you, which is great, as long as it's really good. And I've heard twice that people have gone to Carbone and did not like it. So it's hard. It's hard when you're getting those kind of reviews from, randos. Another place would be like Delilah's. Like Delilah's is not a place that needs your Michelin star. They don't do anything, out of this world, to be honest. I love the restaurant. I was there last weekend and I had a great time. I watched the music, had 3 cocktails, and I went home. Did I ever feel compelled to eat any of the food? Not really. And if I did get any of the food, I probably would have got the cheeseburger because I think the cheeseburger is one of the best things on the menu. They have beef Wellington. They have, the steak frites. They have all these unique dishes. They have this wonderful cavatelli. And I'm never compelled to have any of it because I don't think it's actually that good. But I love the restaurant. So what does that mean? I'm going to the restaurant regardless of the food. And when you have that mindset, I don't think Michelin's going to really care about going to that restaurant and giving you a review. So you may not care. And if they do go and they don't put you in, that's not good either. But you never know if you're going to have them in the restaurant anyway. So what was another place that I wanted to talk about on the pod? Bellagio. There was one more. Sorry, guys. Don't you love it when you come on a podcast, you forget exactly what you were going to talk about? Jean-Georges at Aria. I think they're going to shoot for one. Yeah, steakhouses are weird because it's how do you judge a steakhouse on being a Michelin restaurant? I think it's very, very tough. I think it's actually easier when you're doing something unique to be able to sneak on to the list. So it's going to be very interesting, very, very fun to see what everybody does to try to get in the guidebook and how important people are taking it. And maybe we're going to be in the guidebook, the new doc. That would be sick. The next season, they're trying to figure out who's going to be in the guide. It's going to be so sick. So I love this conversation. I actually love that that news came across because it really added to this episode, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear it. So make sure you check it out. We are going to have a new video up. Make sure you check it out on our social page, _confidential_LV on Instagram. It's for La Barbecue, which is at the Fontainebleau right now until December 14th. If you are not in Vegas, then you are probably not going to be able to get it unless you're coming for the weekend. That'd be nice. But it's through the end of the National Finals Rodeo, which was a really fun pop-up that they were having there. La Boheme, which is in, what do you call it? Arts District. Maybe they'll get one. Oh my goodness, what is that place? Not important. Anyways, so make sure you check out our new video. That's going to be really fun. Check it out on _confidential_LV. If you're on TikTok, I'll put it up there too because they shadow banned us, so we don't really get as many views on that page, which I haven't posted there in a while, so that's unfortunate. But thank you so much, everybody, for listening to the episode. Really appreciate it. If you see me out in town, come up, say hello. But remember, keep it confidential.